So you will find out if I get this to work.
Or did it want us to start at 9?
Could be a... No, see, now it's working.
Okay.
Setting to public. Ah! Oh my gosh! Finally got it working. Nothing like turning it off and turning it on again. And today I have hot chocolate, which is very hot. I know it's a Saturday night. There's a lot of competing live shows to watch. So if you do join us, we appreciate you keeping us company for 30 minutes.
If you don't, we understand.
Yes.
To the live one on YouTube.
Just keep refreshing. It will come out eventually. Yeah, I see it now. It's a YouTube backend. So,
There. Yeah. Hurrah! Illegal gambling. Illegal gambling.
I super want to try the chat app. Maybe tomorrow. The restream chat and how that works. It should be interesting. Wow, very lonely on the stream today. Did everybody go out for quarantine night?
Or we just announced too late.
Not really. It wasn't I mean, and then by now I think we have people who generally expect us on, I hope so. Kaloo.
Still early, so we'll start in a bit.
Yeah, we're trying this new 9:30 slot. We're also going to see if we still have a video dropout at 10 minutes.
Not 4 people so far, but we haven't seen any.
Did you share in tag sessions?
Not yet.
That's an option.
Share in the group.
If you're here, say hi, because the comments are the best way to let us know that someone is actually watching this.
The group and the page?
Just the group, I guess. I don't know if you want to subject us to the page.
Hey, Lance!
Lance!
Okay, this is weird. I can't see everything. Oh, see less. There. Hi, Lance! So, yeah.
I didn't make it public, right?
You have new coffee?
No, it's just hot chocolate.
Ah,
it's keto chocolate.
So good.
I'm tempted to make coffee for later, though.
Yeah.
For if we're gaming tonight.
We will make coffee. Hey, Lance, welcome. Happy to join Pico. We haven't officially started. We're still in the building up for people mode.
We're trying to warm up, and once again, I can't see the Facebook comments real time.
Yeah, thankfully I can see it here on the monitor. So we will be. No, it's okay, Lance. We can see your messages. But since Rocky can't see it on his end,
I can't flash it on the screen.
Can't flash them on the screen.
Oh, I guess it's because I don't even have the Facebook option. So I guess it's because I reset the connection. Yeah, and it's not ready.
But it's okay. I'll still read them out, and we will be talking about different possible entry-level RPGs. Not necessarily limited to those, but We'll talk about entry-level systems, newbie-friendly resources that they can look out.
Entry level approaches, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
how to game with newbies.
But the basic idea is, since eventually this channel will feature a lot of different games, why not start with if people are new to the hobby? But that's getting ahead of ourselves because we
Yes.
haven't officially started. Because for those who are new, the show is always 30 minutes-ish. But we want to keep them short so they don't take over and take too much time.
But last night was bananas. Thanks so much, everyone. I can't believe we did 90 minutes. It's a
Yes.
movie. All right, so should we start? Should we start?
I will start the timer. And this is Tobie.
And this is Rocky. And if it's your first time here, welcome to Baduy Pride, our little space on the internet where we talk about anything we want.
This is completely unscripted and not entirely accurate, but at least it's honest. Join us as we talk about everything and anything random live.
And if it's not your first time here, we appreciate you spending your quarantine Saturday with us because,
Yay!
hey, we can still have fun in lockdown. So, today we're talking about getting into tabletop RPGs. This is the 17th episode of Baduy Pride. Woohoo! I don't know why the comments are not loading for Facebook on Restream, but we can still see you on Facebook itself. Tobie's monitoring.
Yes.
So it's going to be a little tricky today.
But yeah, the topic for today is one of the bigger aspects of our geeky gay life, which is tabletop role-playing games. Many of you are probably familiar with tabletop role-playing games, which is a huge difference from way back in the 80s and 90s when only niche groups actually were aware of the hobby.
Yeah. I mean,
Thanks to
I did not play RPGs when I was younger. I only found out through Tobie when we met in 2009.
and it's a lot of people are now discovering or getting reintroduced to the hobby thanks to popular media. Everything from being featured in shows like Big Bang Theory,
Stranger Things,
yeah, and oh my gosh,
Community.
there you go. I was about to say that school show.
But we can no longer watch that episode of Community because of other concerns that were in
Ultimately,
it.
role-playing games has now become a much more prominent presence in the milieu of things you can do. And there are lots of ways to get into it. So this is our version of getting into tabletop role-playing games.
Yeah, it's similar to how the other time we did a video on like 5 gateway games for getting into board games and card games and stuff. We're making one for tabletop RPGs, but it's more than just talking about the system, but really talking about the hobby as a whole. It's a slightly more complicated procedure.
So I guess we could start with what are tabletop RPGs.
Yes, and Rocky's gonna load. No, your first one was interested in role playing.
Yeah. So interested in role playing. That includes what is role playing games. Role playing games. To try to summarize it in the most simplest or most common denominator, they are games where a group of friends play or portray different characters, and you tell a story together. The story can range in different genres, but ultimately there are systems in place that allow you to determine what happens in the story.
Yeah.
It avoids the problem of cops and robbers wherein, bang, you're dead. Because some people play it that way for some reason, but it's a common example. And the other person goes, no, you didn't hit me.
Is cops and robbers still a common example? I call shade, but I don't know if people still play cops and robbers.
So,
hi, Pico and David.
but
over
ultimately,
YouTube.
role-playing games are all about building a story as a group, telling the tale as you play your roles. There tend to be 2 types of players. There's the group of players, which is everyone else in the game, who play individual characters.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the other player who is known as the dungeon master or the game master or the storyteller, depending on the game. But
the master of ceremonies.
But that person is the one who handles everything else. And in many ways, he or she is expected to be the one who understands or knows the system the most.
Generally.
Because they are expected to be the arbiter of any disagreements during the game. So, interested in role-playing games. maybe you saw it in the shows. Maybe you saw it mentioned.
You
in
had a
movies.
second caption, which was, "What is an RPG?"
See, I told you there was.
We're already there,
Maybe-
but okay.
maybe
Interested in
you-
role playing? Do you want to be someone else? Do you
Maybe-
want to, uh, uh, yeah, not be a mundane accountant, programmer, and the like, and be a swashbuckling pirate? I don't know.
Or maybe you actually saw an event. You saw one of those events before lockdown where people were playing, or maybe you watched one of those videos where people were playing and you want to try it yourself. So this video will help you navigate some of the ways you can do that. And that will include everything from possible resources
to games to consider and other fun stuff.
or systems to look for.
Yes.
So let's start with entry level.
It's out of order. Yeah, sure.
Entry level systems. to
Entry level system. Now, do you really think that there are distinctly entry level RPG systems?
try. One can be a generalist and say, yes, there are systems designed for entry level, and there are systems that are really crunchy and heavy. And if you're going to try it as your first game, you will fail.
Because I mean, like, and more often than not, like, because Dungeons and Dragons is the most popular and one of the longest running tabletop RPGs out there.
Mhm.
A lot of times, when I encounter people interested in the hobby, it's always the question of, I've always wanted to try D&D. I'd like to
Yes.
try D&D. And then, admittedly, I take a moment to be like, do you want to try D&D specifically? Or is it just you just want to try role-playing games as a whole?
And a lot of times, that's because the knowledge or the exposure of the person is just D&D.
Yeah.
There aren't that many people who are aware that there are so many.
It's like looking
many
for
systems.
Coke when you mean soda.
Yes. So going back to your question,
Not a sponsored post.
are there games that are really meant to be newbie friendly? I feel there are games that are designed to be newbie friendly, but I also feel that with the right persons helping you learn the game, any game can be a newbie friendly game if you know how to approach a newbie directed game.
That's true. I mean, it's like with board games where with the right person explaining the rules, almost any board game might be possibly okay for first-time gamers,
Mhm.
but there's definitely some that are friendlier or at least easier. And then we were talking about this before the show, but then we was also asking about easy for who when it
Yes.
comes to RPGs. Because again, Tobie highlighted there's the players and typically some sort of GM, DM, whatever kind of person.
And in as much as you might say simpler systems means newbie friendly, there are actually people who jump into a hobby who are looking for something more than simple. Like you might have people who are so used to simulation games, and if you give them a game that's very narrative, they'll be like, ugh. So we don't do anything, we just decide if it happens. But then if you give them something intricate wherein there's initiative, and then after initiative, we have to see who has reach, and then after reach, we roll the hit, and then we determine defense. That will be beautiful for them.
There's a lot of people who look for system and structure,
Mhm.
and they don't want to just like come up with story, but they want options. Like it's like how multiple choice questions are easier in an exam than an essay or a short answer. And so sometimes it's not bad to have more system.
And ultimately, it leads to what do you want the new person to experience?
Yes.
Do they want to craft stories? Then maybe system crunchy less is better for that.
Mhm.
Are they looking for that simulation which they love from certain games or certain
Do
experiences?
they just want Diablo as a tabletop narrative RPG? So they want to kill things and get loot. So
Mhm.
what do we do?
And they want that experience of, I go through this, will I survive it or will I die? And then you have others who, I just want to go and tell the story. So it's all about that. And when we talk about systems, let's start talking about specific systems.
Tobie has physical props.
As
Other
much,
than a shark hand.
as much as Dungeons and Dragons.
A shark
Yes.
hand.
Lance, just so you know, this is Spoiler Shark. Hello. Spoiler Shark was originally intended to appear whenever there were topics that might be spoilery, but now we just realized we like having Spoiler Shark because Spoiler Shark is fun. So, for those who like Dungeons and Dragons,
Or like that fantasy setting.
yes, many have found Dungeons and Dragons to be questionable in certain ways, including because it's still too system heavy, or there's still too many little dice rolls and type of permutations to think of.
And it's the big question of which version of Dungeons and Dragons are you talking about? Are we talking about the newest one, or are you still talking about the red box edition?
So when it comes to what we would say would be a more entry-level system that's fantasy-oriented and has the feel of Dungeons and Dragons, we would recommend Dungeon World.
Dungeon World is awesome!
Dungeon World offers just enough lightness of crunch and flexibility to become a system that's interesting for people who have not gotten into role-playing games yet.
And the core of Dungeon World is still very D&D. It's a love letter to D&D, ultimately.
If you don't like D&D and you want a fantasy game, then maybe this would not be the game for you. Only because this was designed to be a simpler version of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes, it's like a convention-friendly version that you can play with a group of strangers and teach it to them very quickly because you're just working on limited time at a convention.
So if you are instead looking for a game that will allow you to tell stories, it focuses more on who has the director's seat or who has the position of power to tell where the story goes. One of the systems that we really love, that we have found new timers and even first timers in RPG have gotten easily into, is Jim Pinto's Praxis books. Among them are the Black Monk books and other genres.
Odin's Eye for science fiction.
In the Praxis system, your character sheets are already pre-created, but you still help develop the story you'll build because it's a zero prep game.
Yes.
You discuss as a group what your story will be about based on the selected system. And then it has a very simple dice system wherein you roll your 6-sided dice and you try to hit either 5, 10, or 20. Yeah. And that determines what happens in the game. It's an amazing system because I always felt that it actually teaches you to both be a player and a GM.
That's true, because everybody gets to be the quote-unquote director, like in a movie, and you have types of scenes to set up. Is it just an interlude between two characters, or is it
ensemble?
Yeah, where everybody's there.
So. Is it an interrogation where the really tough questions are asked? And by tough questions, we don't mean did you steal the treasure. We mean knowing you stole the treasure. Why is it that no one else has alerted everyone, despite the fact Rocky's character witnessed you doing it?
Yes.
And it's having those questions that propels the story forward. Now, some might find Praxis still a bit system-heavy because it does have a lot of fiddly things to
There's a lot of things going on.
Thankfully, Jim Pinto has I'm not sure if I should say a simpler system, but I think you could say
an alternative version.
An alternative system called Protocol, which still carries the idea of having characters that are very system-light. It still has every player being part of the narrative building, the zero prep nature. And it still has players determine how scenes flow.
Yep. Which is it's a lot of the good stuff, less dice rolls, more story.
This Protocol book, for example, which was a Kickstarter release, actually has 25 games in it. This is 25 different
25 settings, story types.
In a single book. And if you were to wonder, it looks like a thick book, how am I going to enjoy playing that game? For beginners, you have to realize, of all those pages, these are the rules.
Just that part. I keep drinking because Tobie's leading this episode.
So yeah, highly recommended Protocol. This is the compilation, but each individual game can be purchased in DriveThru RPG.
You can get them as PDFs if you are trying to save the planet and not get more paper. So that's something.
How about those who like Japanese role-playing games? People who grew up playing Final Fantasy.
I like you're throwing this question at me, but you're going to be the one to answer it. But okay, Tobie, what would we play if I like Final Fantasy and I want stuff to happen? Oh, look, there's a book called Ryutama, and it's hard to end it now because it's so gritty. Okay, Ryutama is it's a journeying RPG. So it's an RPG about seemingly mundane aspects of life because all of you have a trade, and these trades are not like warrior and all these things, but it's like farmer. And
I opened exactly to that page.
Oh wow,
farmer
timing. But yeah, you can be farmers or hunters and the like artisans that make things, and you're just going to go on little journeys together. Your most stressful thing is like at the beginning of every day, we're going to roll to see how well you slept.
And if you did not sleep well enough, you have half hit points.
Yes, and hit points are not just like life or damage, but hit points is also more about your mental health.
Your
it's
stamina.
It's very holistic, you know. So, but it's like, oh my god, you can start at half your life at the start of the day because it's more than just combat, but it's really about the experience of traveling.
So Ryutama borrows a lot from the familiar Japanese role-playing game systems. You have your staples such as magic points and hit points.
There's positioning, there's the forward
Yes,
row
yes.
and the back row. I don't know why they diagram it as an egg, but it totally makes sense this way. There's a lot of system in this, I will admit, but the nature of stories that you can tell is just delightful.
And it has that nice advantage of being familiar. So if you are running it with someone who's never played role-playing games before, but you know they love Suikoden or they love other games, Final Fantasy,
A lot of turn-based JRPGs.
then you can cite those as examples. So like in combat, as mentioned, there were zones. You could literally go, you can move to the closed zone. That means your melee weapons work, but that means any of the monsters can hit you too. If you move to the far zone, then only those with ranged attacks can hit you. And that makes perfect sense for people new to gaming. It doesn't require so much as the in other RPGs wherein we have to calculate the angle of the attack and the velocity.
We don't go full simulationist in this game, so that's something. Okay, quick comic roundup.
Yes.
Andrew was already asking what are good TRPGs, so we just answered that sort of
That's what
briefly.
this episode is all about.
Woohoo! And then Pico shares that he hasn't tried D&D, but he admits it's the usual that comes to mind,
Mhm.
except before he met us, because we've talked to him about so many different games.
Yes.
And then, but then Andrew's worried, well, will he not play this game because of sleep? Oh no, sleep problems. That's always a challenge. So be careful. It will make for more interesting stories at the very least. Okay, so
And
I
then
think,
I guess the last one I could bring up, and
one more.
I don't have an actual book to show.
Yes.
This one might be tricky because some would say it's not a role playing game. Some would say it's a story game.
Oh, we're
But
gonna open up. We're gonna poke that bear.
But I don't. I think that's just a question of semantics. I think all of them are about playing roles. The game system is called Fiasco.
Fiasco.
And the reason why I highly recommend this is because for those who are cost conscious, the main rules are all you need to buy. And you have tons and tons and tons of play sets, which are different ways to play it, different genres. Everything from sci-fi to horror to mystery to wuxia to detective stories, and they're all available in Drive-Thru RPG.
Yes.
The main premise of Fiasco is it's a game system inspired by the Coen Brothers movies.
Tobie's always making sure he's saying the right name. That's why he looks at me.
Yes, and I said it right.
Yes, you did.
I said it right.
Hooray!
Wherein you play characters who have high ambition and low self-control. So they tend to have high dreams and they tend to get into each other's way because as the story progresses, it has to get worse. And that's because it's a fiasco.
Yes.
So you might start with, let's say, Rocky playing the card dealer in the casino who wants to start a new life. And I might be the performer who does the magic tricks who hates my boss. And in that game session, we might decide that we can attack the vault and steal the money out and escape
That's a smart idea.
to a whole new life. And as we play the game, the story naturally will get worse because the system is designed to work in that manner. Dice rolling is only used at the start of the game in terms of generating elements.
Rolling characters, the setting, and things like that.
And then it is also used at the end of the game when you're all collected black and collected white dice.
To see your final resolution. Do you survive all of this? Do you not?
Do you have a happy ending? Do you have a tragic one?
Spoiler alert, there are no happy endings in Fiasco.
But ultimately, it's a game that just focuses on work on telling the story, but people still have input because while people are telling the story, the players who are not involved in that scene then vote quietly. Do we give the white die, which means it will go well for that person, or do we give the black die, which means it should end bad in that scene? And that gives a very awesome way of giving people shared narrative control. But at the same time, again, training for GMs. It teaches you to think on your feet.
Yeah, to stress it again though, Fiasco is one of those the game without a GM DM character,
Yes.
a person. It's everybody shares that responsibility, and it makes for some exciting stories. And because of the nature of the Fiasco publishing universe, most of the settings are pay as you want.
Yes.
It's the base game that you have to pay for. So that's a good thing to explore.
Now, we can spend more than a few more hours talking about all these other systems.
When we're down to 10 minutes.
So it might be better to talk about all these games. So it's not be better to talk about the actual resources that you can look into. First, a common question for many people is, where do I get the games? If you look,
Thank you, Julie, for greeting me. Still, happy birthday.
Hi, Julie. If you look at online sites, the biggest ones are itch.io, is that how you say it? Itch. And
I've never thought
RPG.
about how to pronounce itch aloud. Okay, but itch.io. Yeah.
Itch.io has
Drive through RPG.
an amazing collection of games from a lot of indie designers.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are very, very aware that not everyone can afford to spend that much money in the hobby. So you have very, very generously priced games available.
Yeah.
Many of them are even pay what you want. On the same token, Drive Through RPG is another website that offers so many possible options. They have pay what you want options.
They're like the Amazon of RPGs.
And they even have print on demand if you're the type of person who can't really enjoy a book unless it's printed. Those aren't the only resources out there, and we're not really, it's not a paid advertisement or anything, but they're the fastest ones that come.
They're the most convenient. I mean, they're the reason why they're the big boys. And at the same time, especially for like Drive Through RPG, you'll be surprised how a lot of publishers have like quick start versions of their full game. So you're not committed to buying a full system if you're not ready. You can look and see if they have a quick start. It'll only be probably a dozen pages of the most condensed aspect of the rules, and then you get a taste of what it could be like before you commit.
Other resources then include, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of groups out there.
Groups,
that
Discords, Twitter accounts.
That are more than happy to get you started in the hobby. Some groups even have, I forgot what you call them, but there's systems that there are specific GMs who are trained to approach new games. There are others. There are others who are trained to help introduce different systems. Especially now that we have what's it called? Organized play.
Yes,
wherein the different companies of different game systems have actually designed specifically games to work. That even if you play with GM Tobie for your very first session, you could carry those characters and continue playing more games of that game line with GM Rocky. Even if we've never met.
Sounds so weird to say.
Because it's all organized in that way. Then beyond groups and beyond the books themselves, YouTube and Twitch.
Oh yes, we are in a golden age of actual plays, and so you can go to Twitch not just to watch people play different video games or scare themselves silly with survival horror stuff, but you can also watch people playing tabletop RPGs.
Actual play videos.
Yeah, and a lot of the actual plays have really kind of grown because of quarantine. But a lot of us are forced to play online, and playing through online platforms kind of makes it a little easier to transition to also streaming those games at the same time.
Yes. Be aware that when you watch actual plays, however, not everyone records an actual play with the thought of teaching.
That's true. So it's just about the story and the experience. But sometimes there are specific YouTube channels that are very newbie friendly. That they have their
top-down camera.
They're really trying to explain it how it's gonna go. Yeah.
So to be aware of that when you're searching. Be also aware that many even have multiple episodes because they like telling the story and introducing systems as they go along. Beyond actual plays, beyond books, and beyond groups that they can join, you have the websites. Everything from Roll20 to Astral to the Obsidian Portal and the like.
These are different online tools that help people play RPGs. Like Roll20 allows players to meet. They can have virtual maps that you can share so that it's easier for everyone to see.
And these aren't just top-down maps. If you are using paid accounts and you have the patience and the know-how for it, you can actually design maps that have dynamic lighting.
We do not.
So when characters move into a certain corridor, the way the light is cast and bounces off walls and places, other areas in shadow will happen.
And that's very important for certain tactical games.
For more narrative-based people, there's like places like Storium. But ultimately, if you just want a place where you can chat with your fellow gamers, have an area where you can roll dice and the like, Discord actually already offers that.
Discord's kind of amazing, especially in this time of quarantine.
Yeah. It's amazing set of bots that even includes options to play music, shuffle cards.
Yeah, there's like virtual card dealing bots. There's dice bots that support all the different types of dice that come in this hobby. Most people think about tabletop RPGs because of polyhedral dice, so that's an option.
And I guess the last thing I could add is, for those who enjoy it but don't have the time to play or commit to a schedule, there's always what we call play by post.
Old school.
Yes, so it's old school, but for many, it's the only way they ever played. It's not necessarily old, but it's basically you have groups. Sometimes it's Discord or others wherein they use forums.
Sometimes it's still email and email groups.
And you basically play by running through a turn, and when you do your turn, you type the narrative as if you were writing a story. Some do it that you're supposed to write in first person, others do it you're supposed to write in third person. And then sometimes they have a separate thread for dice rolls, or they'll keep it in the same thread, but there's brackets or italics or
whatever protocols they come up with to make it clear.
But ultimately,
it exists.
If you want to play real time, if you want to play when you have time, options are available in this golden age of role-playing games.
This golden age of role-playing games at home.
Next section. Or do we have more comments?
Captions. I think you're. There was like this other things you wanted to check out.
You can bring that up.
Okay, because you're like 4 minutes left.
So down to the last 4 minutes. Other things we'd like to check out, and I guess we can also toss in any of the comments that might be there. Suikoden. Yes, we mentioned that because of Ryutama, and you can actually make a game inspired by Suikoden using the Ryutama system if you wanted to. Ryutama has different magic systems that you can toss in. Other things can include, what else would be systems you'd throw in as if you were going to try something for the first time? Or if you wanted to try something and it wasn't hard to jump into.
Okay. In general, the success and love for Dungeon World is because the fundamentals behind it is something called games that are powered by the apocalypse.
Yes.
It's a basic rule set that has been, that was like shared with everyone so that you can create different games.
Yes.
So, in general, powered by the apocalypse games, which now cover so many different genres and story types, are generally newbie friendly. I mean, like there's one where we played it, we're like Power Rangers. There's another where like Sense8 characters.
My favorite is the telenovela.
There's a telenovela RPG.
De las Pasiones, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so a lot of that works out really well. As long as someone takes the time to understand the system and help everybody through it. It does need a GM or DM type person, but once you understand one Powered by the Apocalypse game, you kind of have a grasp of all. Yes. So it's a lot of stuff.
On a similar vein, if you want your basic system to be as simple as this is my number, so that's the number of dice I throw, and depending on those dice, I know how many successes I have. You have the World of Darkness games. We're talking about the classic World of Darkness games.
Wow.
Just to make sure that they don't mistake it for the new World of Darkness games. Because in the classic World of Darkness games, it's always about you look at your attribute and your skill, you roll that many dice, and if they come out equal or higher to a certain number, then you have successes. And the GM just tells you what happens next.
I guess another thing to gamble, especially to help people get into the hobby, is that if you have a particular TV show or movie that you like, double check if there is an existing RPG system for it. A lot of them do a great job of like really acting as gateway games to help people into the hobby, and they try to make the rules fairly flexible because they know that they want to help people play games that match what they see in their stories.
So we have a question from Jin. Is car crash scene staples in a telenovela RPG? Actually,
it can be if you want.
In the Pasiones game, there is this character who can die, but then can come back because, no, that was my twin.
There's an evil twin archetype. It's amazing. And then little things. So I'm just like, I think most guys have been introduced to D&D first. That's true. A lot of people have encountered D&D first.
There's no denying the reach.
It's the biggest game.
Yeah.
and share some love for Discord. And then,
Julie cites Vampire the Masquerade as the
Yes.
game that she's
at the
experienced.
same time, Andrew also highlights that World of Darkness games have good game titles, although he's kind of confused by the rules.
It can be confusing because the old system spread out everything in so many books, but the basic general idea is there. What else? If you want to go really super simple, there are games like Prince Valiant, wherein you determine things by flipping a coin. If,
A D2.
if you go even simpler, you have games like Chubos Marvelous Wish Granting Engine, which is
Say
surprisingly
that 10 times really fast.
which is surprisingly a terribly hard book to read because it's very confusing.
It's not that surprising. We read other
But
books
then
by this person.
You will realize that the most basic premise, the game works this way. You have tokens, and if you want something to happen, you spend the token.
Wish granted.
And if you do something because that's your character, I'm the swordsman, so I spend a scene boasting that I'm good with my swords, I get a token back. So it's that simple. And it's one of those few games that has one of the strangest systems, which is the more hurt you are, the more tokens you get. Because just like in any cartoon, that's when the main character
It's
becomes
the duck!
determined to succeed. So, for new viewers, what is that duck? That duck means it's 30 minutes.
Yes.
And since it's 30 minutes,
you gotta wrap up.
that's all the time we have for this topic.
Oops, I'm gonna leave the title on. No, let's just do it. Let's just do it. All right. So that's 30 minutes. We had a lot of fun, and we hope that you will join us next time for another Baduy Pride episode. If you have questions for us about anything we've ever covered in any of these episodes, which includes games and being queer and I don't know all these things,
Or if you have questions or suggestions of other things you want us to talk about,
then please fill out the Google form at bit.ly Baduy Pride Ideas, and we'd be glad to try to tackle them if possible. We reserve the right to not necessarily tackle everything, and I've combined topics at times when they have the same idea. And then you can follow us on Twitter, all Tobie No Shade, and I'm RG Suinico, so that's always that option.
you could check out our website, which is baduypride.com.
The blog!
It has everything from old episodes to pictures of our long life together, as well as a lot of...
Wow, long life together.
Sorry, I was in
What a thing to stress right after I thought, it's been my birthday.
Happy
so
birthday!
Long life means we're old.
But yeah, you can learn more about us and our relationship, as well as everything else we've covered so far in that website.
Yes. So, and then, of course, feel free to continue the conversation in the comments below and let us know what you think about possible newbie-friendly RPGs, or what approaches do you take when you're playing with new players and you want to get them excited about this fascinating world of pretending to be things that they are not.
Be sure to subscribe for notifications, whether on Facebook or YouTube, so you don't miss our next live stream. Please, please, please still feel free to reshare this link so you can get more people to check out our show.
And like this video, because we're trying to feed algorithms to convince the platforms that we're awesome. Okay. Once again, I'm Rocky.
And I'm Tobie.
And this is Baduy Pride. So we're going to have to do end screen.